Well, good morning, Marian
Morning,
Castelluccio,
Peg.
and welcome
Thank
to
you.
A Sister Story. It's been long in coming. You said, I'm moving to Adrian. I'll do it when I get to Adrian. So now we know you are residing in Adrian.
Yes.
And are delighted to have you amongst us, your quiet little self. So the way we handle this is a lot of people want to know who we are and what was our beginnings. Where did we begin and who were some of our early influences? Many times people are conscious of our ministries, but not where did we come from. And of course now where we came from and our experiences are getting smaller and smaller. So anyway, if you just start off telling us where you began your life, your schooling, your family, particularly your family, your siblings, what was your spirituality like? I mean, Italian? So tells us something about your culture. So the floor is yours, and then we'll move from there into your schools and your ministries and all. We can't go through all of your many places, but there are some that were very significant in who you are right now, so you can make the choice. So let's begin with where you began.
Okay. I was born and raised in Oakland, California, and we were somewhat a throwback generation, because I was born at home.
Right, yeah.
And my twin brothers were born at home, and my Grandma Castelluccio would almost have us birthed before the doctor got there. In fact, so much that during the war, the doctor asked her if she would go around with him to deliveries, and she said, no, I do this for family. I only do this for family. So I was literally born in my home, and 4 years later, my twin brothers were born, and then my last brother was born in the hospital because one of the twins was so curious. Mom said, he's probably going to be at the end of the bed watching all of this.
Oh, isn't that cute?
So we teased my brother, who was born in the hospital, that he was born in a sterile environment. There's something wrong with him.
Good.
In our Italian community, our Italian tradition, the last son to marry stayed at home and took care of his parents.
Interesting.
And my dad was the last son to marry. And so when he married my mother, they moved into Grandma and Grandpa's house. And they were to take care of them the rest of their lives. And so we called the house on 98th Avenue the family homestead.
Nice.
No one lived more than 10 blocks from Grandma's house. We're talking about maybe
That was very
10
long
or
time
10,
ago. People
10
didn't
or
hear.
11 families. Grandma somewhat ruled what she said was it. She said it in a kind way, but what she said was it.
And you knew it was it.
And you knew it was it. And I was named after her. So the first girl born in each family has a form of Maria Anna.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm Marian, which is Maria Anna put together.
Mm-hmm.
And I had her to myself for 4 years. My brothers weren't born for 4 years.
Got it, got it.
But
Okay.
what was wonderful in that house was that everybody came to Grandma's house for Easter, Christmas, the big holidays,
Mm-hmm.
and Grandma made homemade raviolis.
Oh my.
And
now you do.
no, I don't. You know how your family makes something and you try to make it like them, but it isn't quite right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the ravioli story. So everybody in our family was unchurched. So they made their baptism, first communion, confession, confirmation. Then they didn't have to go to church anymore.
Interesting.
Now, our family unit, my Irish mother, we went to church. And
So an Irish mother and Italian father.
mm-hmm.
Interesting household. Uh-huh.
Yes, yeah. They complement each other really well.
Good, good.
And so so when I had this inkling, my sophomore academic counselor, Sister Marian and Adrian Dominican.
Yes, yes.
I was taught by Adrian Dominican's 3rd grade through high school. And she was guiding me into the college prep courses that were at Bishop O'Donnell High School. And at the end of the session, she said, have you ever thought about joining the community? And I laughed at her. That was the funniest thing I'd ever heard.
Okay, God.
But she sowed the seed. So I spent my junior year.
She disturbed you, huh?
She did.
Yeah.
She did. She created this feeling in my gut that maybe I should look at this. And that I felt as if I didn't try it, I would spend my whole life wondering if I was supposed to do it.
Okay.
So I eventually entered to try it. I had no intention of staying.
I didn't know that about you.
That was 67 years ago.
That's right, 67.
And actually, when we made our first profession, it was an open ceremony. And my Uncle Pete, who, my dad worked swing shift, and my Uncle Pete went to every dad-daughter event in high school with me. So he was like a father.
Where was your dad?
My dad worked swing shift, so he
Oh,
went to
swing
work
shift,
at 3,
you said that, yeah.
and then
Okay.
didn't get home till midnight.
Okay.
And so he came to Adrian for my first profession
Wow, that's,
with the intention of bringing me home.
but you
And
didn't know that.
I didn't know that. And so he saw how happy I was. And so when he got back, he said to my mother, "Gert, I'm so sorry." And she said, "About what?" And he said, I went to bring her home. And she's so happy. And my mother said, "I could have saved you a lot of money. I knew that."
So your mom wasn't able to come?
No, my family couldn't afford to
Right,
travel.
right.
So even the times during formation when people could see their families every 3 months, my family couldn't afford to travel. Other people would invite us to be with their families, thinking that would be helpful. And
made you more-
sometimes it just made me more sad
Yeah,
that my
yeah.
family wasn't here. But I knew the good intentions
Oh,
of the
God.
people who invited me
I
to
know,
be there.
those times were
Yeah.
challenging.
So they did come back when I was a novice. They bought a new station wagon, and they drove cross country, and we were in summer school. And I could only see them when I wasn't in class. But the first thing my father did when he saw me coming down with this big smile on his face, he put his hand between the wimple
Yeah.
and my head to see if I had any hair. And that might have been a sort of a turning point for him. He wasn't happy that I entered. I found out later that the things that made his happiness were not in my choice, and all he cared was that I was happy.
Okay.
And one short,
So you had 3 brothers
I had
and
3
yourself,
brothers.
so there's 4 of you, so you were the only daughter.
I was the only daughter. I was the
So,
oldest. I
right.
was the second person to move out of the family homestead. And so he came to me and said, "How am I going to have grandchildren?" And I said, "Oh, Dad, you've got 3 sons. You'll have lots of grandchildren. We're talking like about 56, and they'll have your name. My children won't
that's
have your
right.
name."
Oh, that's
And
good point.
So somehow God gave me a response to my dad. One of the questions he asked was, "Who's making you do this?" Thinking the sisters were pushing me. And I don't know where I got the words, but I looked at him at 17 and said, "Dad, God's making me do this. I need to try because the rest of my life I'll be thinking about, should I have done that?" And that was 67 years ago.
And
So
have
I
you
think
made
it
up
worked.
your mind?
I think I'm going to stay, Peg.
Okay, beautiful.
So, family members, somebody gave me a week, somebody gave me a month. That was the most anybody gave me. They said I was a mama's girl, like I couldn't be away from my mom. And so before I left, my mom and dad sat me down and said, "We want you to make us a promise." And I said, "Well, I have to hear what you want me to promise." And they said, "Promise us you won't stay to prove everybody wrong."
Okay.
So they really knew my personality. And then my high school principal gave me enough money to come home if I didn't want to stay because he knew my parents couldn't afford it. You know, so
Your high school principal, and that was at O'Dowd?
at O'Dowd,
Okay.
it was a diocesan priest.
Yeah, oh,
at
okay,
O'Dowd.
okay.
Yeah. So I got to the novitiate, and my first mission was Casa Grande, Arizona. the middle of the desert. We had one stoplight, 2 paved streets. Thank God we had air conditioning in the convent, but in the classrooms we didn't. We had those straw things that water ran over.
We didn't have air conditioning.
So many of us learned to teach from the back of our classroom. Back of our classroom. I was a primary teacher. I couldn't do that. You know, and so I taught 1st and 2nd grade. I was there 7 years.
Oh.
And then the places I've gone to, I went to Santa Cruz, taught primary. I went to Albuquerque and taught junior high. Then the community asked, Jean Joseph asked if Adrian would train 4 sisters in theology because the Vatican II Council had happened.
Yeah.
So I was one of the ones that was asked.
Interesting. Okay.
And they said, would you like to study full time? Well, I did all of my study at summer school and study full time. Oh yeah, I want to study full time. They said, well, we got the place picked out and so it's theology and it's in New York City.
Oh my word, that was hard to take.
And that was hard to take. And another nice thing about that is the sister who was in charge of finance at that time, and I wish I remembered her name, when she wrote us a letter about our budget, she said to us—
Not Cletus.
No, it was after her, and I'm sorry, my 69-year-old memory won't bring it back. She wrote us a letter about our budget as students, but she ended the letter by saying, "You'll probably never be in New York again in your life, and budget for doing fun things, going to plays and doing fun things." And that was such a wonderful freedom, and in her lifetime I had a chance to thank her.
Good.
Because I would have budgeted a tight budget.
Yeah.
And I got my master's in the art of theology. It was just a 2-year program for people who weren't going for PhDs.
Yeah.
And then I came back and went into parish ministry, Albuquerque and then Oakland Diocese for 4 years, my home diocese. And then I was asked to be vocation director.
For us.
Yes, for us.
Okay.
And I came back for 4 years.
And when was that? I don't really.
88 to 72.
Okay.
I was back here on campus.
88, 72.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I went back west. And up to this time, it's been appointments in the mail or asking. But when I came back, I knew I have always been a social worker. You don't do parish work and things without being a social worker.
If you only had an outgoing personality, that's a joke, everyone.
So I stayed a year to get my California residency, and then I went to San Francisco State and got my MSW, and then I did the 3,600 hours to get my clinical license. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker. And then I thought, how could I use that would also support the finances of the congregation? And so I went to work for the county.
Okay.
It took me 13 years to get a 10-year pension. But I did that because the money I made, up to my Social Security, and the money I made also supported myself and another sister. And I thought, I can do that. Not every sister can work out of the church things, but I know I could do that. And so that was an intentional plan to come to the congregation with a retirement plan and higher Social Security. So in reality, those two together now, I'm still making a donation more than that to the congregation. And that brings me great joy because I had a chance to work on the margins, and I wanted our younger sisters to have a chance to work on the margins and not think they had to take jobs to take care of us old ladies.
Well, that was good. I mean, you were making decisions for the common good.
Yes.
Now, maybe for the common good, it would have been for those to work with the less fortunate. But it's not always good to hear another side of the same story.
Yeah. And so with the county, we did outpatient mental health. And we worked with the people in the county that were most chronic and severe. Schizophrenia, bipolar, with those diagnoses. I worked with a team that we didn't identify the person with the diagnosis.
Okay.
The person was not a schizophrenic.
Right,
The
right.
person was,
Right.
this was Tom who had schizophrenia. And we treated the whole person, even though we had to write a Medi-Cal note
Right.
so we get paid. We treated the whole person.
Wonderful.
And every 6 months in those 13 years, I would say to the client, now who was Jean that came here 6 months ago? And she'd say, oh, she was like this, this, and this. And I said, isn't that wonderful? You did that. I'm a good coach. I can ask you questions, but I don't go out and live them. You live them. So that they knew when I wasn't there anymore, they wouldn't lose what they had gained. That was, it's always been
You empowered them.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a
And that's
great
always been my
gift to
approach
do.
to anything. Work
Yeah.
myself out a job
Yeah, wonderful.
and then go to another place and work myself
Wonderful.
out of a job.
So how do you think you're going to do that here?
Well,
No, I'm just teasing.
well, you know, when I came here, it was a big move for me. I was born and raised in California. I ministered out west, let's see, 67 years. At least 62 of
Right,
those years I've been
right,
west.
Right.
But one day God tapped me on the shoulder 3 years ago, and God said to me, it's time. And I knew what God meant. I was in prayer, and I knew what God meant. It was time to come here. And I said to God, really? Really? And God said, really? So I said to God, can I take 3 years to do it? And God said, okay. So 3 years ago, I told my family, who were just really upset.
Oh, sure.
And I needed to hear myself say it. But now, when I left, they said, oh, when you go to Adrian.
Okay.
Because I had honored our relationships. And then I told good friends, and then I told my church. I did what I called honorable closure.
Closure.
And I gave everybody a bead that is a touchstone. So a touchstone is something you give someone else you love when you leave, and you both carry it in your pocket or wherever you want. I told them I'm carrying it in my pocket because I blow my nose a lot. And the love connection is never broken. You know, and since I've been here this 2 months, we still continue our every 2-week family Zoom that we did with COVID. And I know people are at ease, but I also know they wanted to hear my voice.
Good, and that's important.
And for them, because I can't hide my emotions. My face says everything. My niece Marie said to me on one of our private calls, she said, Auntie, you sound so happy. I'm really glad you went there.
Are your 3 brothers still alive?
One brother is deceased,
Okay, and his name is?
Joseph,
Joseph. You
one
didn't
of the
give us-
twins.
Okay.
He had, the male side of the Castelluccio men die of heart attacks.
Okay.
And
Okay.
he was young. He was 48, 50. He was in the hospital
Very young.
recovering from double pneumonia. They brought him his dinner. They went to get his tray, and he was dead. So
So the other twin was his name?
Philip.
Philip.
And then
Oh,
my
yeah.
youngest brother was Pete.
Pete.
Peter.
Okay.
Well, in those days, Philly, Joey, Petey. And he got away with murder because he was named after my grandmother's husband. And even when I was home, I would say, he's being spoiled. You know, he could do no wrong. Just one quick story. So my mother and my grandmother, when my mother moved into the Italian house, she said to Grandma, I don't know how to cook. What if I do all the cleaning, you do the cooking?
Sounds good
So-
to me.
Yeah, and those 2 women got together so well. It was amazement to me to live with your mother-in-law and have it be wonderful.
It is. It's
And
unusual.
so, my brother Pete had done something wrong, and Mom's punishment was sit on a chair. So she said, sit on that chair and wait. And when I come home, we'll talk about it. And so she left to do something. And then my grandma came in the room and said to my brother Pete, well, what are you doing sitting on a chair? And he said, Mom said I had to sit here because I did something bad. And she says, go play, go play. So my mother comes back and he's playing in the yard. And she says, what are you doing out here? And he said, Grandma told me I could come. So she didn't say anything to him. But she went into the house and said, Annie, when my children become teenagers and disrespect you, don't come to me, because what you just did is undermining my authority with my children. And Grandma never did it again.
Mm.
That's how well they worked. They worked together. And my brother Pete was spoiled.
Okay, so you have lots of nieces and nephews, because they're going to watch this and they love to hear their names, I'm sure.
Okay, so my brother Phil was the oldest of the twins. He's 15 minutes older than Joe.
Okay.
And he has a son, Rob, and a daughter, Marie. Rob has 2 children, Alicia and Philip. And then the daughter has 2 boys. And then my other brother, Joe, had 2 children. They all had their boy first and their girl second.
Take care of them.
Yeah, and Mark married and has a son, Joseph.
Okay.
And Tammy's never married. And then my brother Pete has had 2 children, the boy first, the girl second, Brian and Nicole. And then they have children. So Pete and Ellen have 5 grandchildren, all boys. Joe has 1 grandchild. And then Phil has 2 grandchildren. And his son has had 2 children, and his daughter had 1 child.
Good.
And so, we continue, the group of us in my age thing were raised like brothers and sisters in the house on 98th Avenue. You just say house on 98th Avenue and we all grin. It was a happy place.
Well, I'm sure you're going to get back there pretty soon, for their sake and for your sake. But tell me this, aside from the family, I know you're a very close family, what do you do for fun? Briefly.
I'm a crafty person.
Okay.
So I can crochet and knit. I do puzzles. I do games on the computer. I take walks.
Okay.
I go to movies.
Okay.
I have a whole range. And sometimes just a quiet walk in nature. So there's no lack of me of fun things to do. What I've needed to learn as I aged was how to be quiet. So God invited me to embrace what I call my shadow.
Okay.
And one day I heard this voice say, oh, it would be nice to go in chapel and sit and be quiet. And I looked around to see who was talking. And it was me. And so I think we're all called, whatever our personalities, to somewhere in our 50s, to learn to embrace what we considered a shadow and not a good thing. So I've learned how to actually be quiet, Peg.
And then everyone's going to wonder what's wrong. Is something wrong with Marian?
That's right. One last thing I would like to say about the house on 98th Avenue, if I didn't say it. It's the place where I learned God's unconditional love. You could do anything. Sometimes we don't like you. We don't like the choices you've made.
Right.
You never lose our love.
Wonderful.
And that was such a surety in growing up, and a surety for all of my life, and a recognition that God was present even though people didn't go to church. They lived the gospel.
Where do you find spirit and determination when you have a challenge in front of you? Not to go into great detail, but what gets you through difficult situations?
What I've learned from workshops I've taken, when I have a challenge in front of me, and I don't want to face it, I keep doing this. So I keep it in existence. So if I'm willing to face my pain, there's a gift on the other side. And I can go through it and receive the gift on the other side. I don't like to miss anything, even the gift that's on the other side of pain.
Wow.
And it's made me a great therapist.
I can tell.
Because it helps people not to carry a lot of baggage that's going to come back and bite them. And I've had challenges in my life. Like I wanted to go to San Francisco State, get my master's degree in social work. They were the best program. But they took people in certain segments, and there wasn't room for me. And one of the reasons there wasn't room for me was I was white.
Wow.
And because they train people from communities on the margins to go back to communities on the margins.
Oh, interesting. Wonderful.
And I so wanted to go there. And I knew I was going to get there. So in the summer, I took the class I was missing to get in.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 days before school opened, I got a call saying there's a place for you. You know, so I'm a pretty determined woman.
Good for you.
And yet I know I don't control the world.
Mm-hmm.
Just a part of it.
Favorite scripture saying?
My
Don't go into depth, just what's the saying?
The favorite scripture saying is in John's Gospel, chapter 14. I don't know the verse, when Jesus said to the disciples, I'm going to be leaving you. Be not afraid. I am sending you a helper, the Holy Spirit, who will teach you everything you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
I rely on that.
Good. It's very obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You've had challenges. Everything isn't that happy family on
No.
98th or 94th Street?
98th.
98th Street, yeah.
I believe life is a yo-yo.
Yes,
when you're
it
down,
is.
you're going to go up, and when you're up, you're going to go down.
Yeah. Is there something about you, briefly, that we would say, oh no, I don't believe that about Marian?
One thing I came to mind when I reviewed the questions was that I was a basketball teacher, basketball coach as a nun.
Okay.
So when I went back to my home parish, I was a part of Girls CYO. I played basketball 6th grade through high school. And they had stopped CYO. So I started up again. So I coordinated a CYO program.
Oh my goodness, that's good.
And was and reestablished girls basketball teams. And I got the dance teacher to teach them how to fall. And I got the male coach to teach them how to be aggressive. And I was a really good coach.
As you look at your legacy, what is it, the one thing that you hope all those that you have encountered, which are a lot of human beings, what is it that you want them to remember? One thing about you, Sister Marian.
I want them to remember I love them. And that I serve them because I love them. And that I knew they had their answers. I didn't. Yet I could journey with them in a way they could find their answer.
Wonderful.
And that's what I hope they remember. They remember love and my total respect, that they knew who they were and we would uncover it together.
Beautiful. You're Marian Castelluccio, but in religious life, your religious name was Phillip Marian. Now, we ask our sisters we like to have that on the video, because there's some people that don't know you by Marian, they know you by Phillip Marian. Your students, I don't know what you called yourself when you were a social worker. Were you Marian by then?
I was Marian by that time.
Okay, so, because this is also on YouTube, and people, once they hear that you can get the Adrian Dominican stories on YouTube, they'll put in the name that they remember you by. So that's why we like to have both of them.
Yeah. Can I just say one thing?
What? Yeah, just one thing, Marian.
My mother said your dad wants to keep your name he gave you. And I don't want you to take Gertrude because I never liked it. I'm not going to call you Gertrude. So I took my dad's name.
Phillip Marian. Yeah. Did he mind you going back?
No, he didn't, but I did ask him.
Oh, you did? That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Okay. Very good. I didn't have to say cut. Your wonderful gift and your ability to share the depth of what's inside you is very important. So I thank you for who you are and who you've become and the lives that you have touched. We are blessed to have you here on campus, and this next ministry is going to just be wonderful for all of us. So thank you again for sharing who you are with us.
It's my joy to do this.
Yes.